Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Silent Hill podcast. Well, I went ahead this weekend and I watched a little bit more of the walkthrough for the first Silent Hill game. And I'm doing this throughout, I guess, sparse throughout several weeks because it almost feels like a serial episode of some sort where it's that weekly thing where you don't see the whole thing in its entirety. Instead, you see it in chapters. And then that way, every week, whenever you come back to it, it feels very refresh. It feels like something that you really want to see, or you're eager to see what the next part of the story goes. So in this case, I'm almost finished with the walkthrough itself, but doing it in this manner, it definitely makes it seem that much more better as opposed to seeing it all at once and then getting tired after several hours of watching it and not really paying too much attention. This next entity that was found within the game is sort of like a mini boss of sorts. It's not an actual boss itself, at least it certainly didn't feel that way when I was watching the guy play his walkthrough, only because it seemed like it was relatively easy to beat this entity. And what I'm talking about here is the monster known as the Twinfeeler, which you'll see a picture of here. Very simple, very basic monster, very simplistic when it comes to fighting it. Essentially, it's just a giant larva, a giant caterpillar, or a giant insect, whatever I guess designation you want to give to it, and it's found later on within the game as you go into a part where once again you're in that dark world, and this is a precursor actually to another boss, which is an advanced form of this Twinfeeler, which is called a float stinger, which I'll save for another video. That one definitely is a boss, considering the hardness that I saw the player have to go through when it came to fighting it. But let's talk first about the Twinfeeler. Again, it's found in the dark world, and it's at a place that actually surprised me. It scared me, because what had happened was you're at a portion of the level where you hear this strange sound from your radio, and yet again it's another precursor of you facing something unique, except this time I never heard of this sound. It's like a siren of some sort, and it's very eerie. It's the only time I've ever heard that sound within the game itself, and the closer you get to whatever you're coming to, the louder it becomes. And then as you come across a certain part of the level, you see a corpse, and then you see these two little things. They look like the creepers from the previous levels, except they're not. They look different. They're similar, but they're different at the same time, and they're feeding on the corpse. And the part that surprised me and scared me was, because I always have, when I'm watching this walkthrough, I always have my headphones on and I'm listening to it very loud, was all of a sudden, as you get closer to these things, then the entire floor drops under you and you disappear. It's a loud crash, and then you drop through the entire black hole that's now there onto the next part of the level. But what these things were that you saw very, very briefly were little mini Twinfeelers. These are like baby Twinfeelers, and what they're doing is obviously they're eating or feeding on a corpse in that level. Some poor sap from Silent Hill, from I guess the town there, that for whatever reason was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And apparently you can actually kill those Twinfeelers. You have to do it from a distance, obviously, before you fall. But if you do so, like use any kind of ammo, gun, whatever, and you can kill them both. And when you do so, it stops that strange noise emanating from your radio. But again, you have to go out of your way to do that, especially if you're playing it like a second or third time where you know that those things are going to be there. So you fall through that giant hole, you land into an area that's covered in sand, and purposefully you land on top of like a gated fence, a metallic fence of some sort. It looks like it's this was the part of the floor you were just on, but now it becomes a fence between yourself and the sand, and this is done on purpose because as you're walking around, that's when this mini boss comes out, and it comes out pretty interesting. I mean, there's a little, I guess, cutscene of it, very brief, emerging, and when it comes out, you realize that it's pretty much the same things you saw before, those little mini Twinfeelers, but this one is much larger. It's larger than Harry. It's not as large as a split head, but it's somewhere in between, and basically it's a larger version of those little mini ones, and its whole purpose is to try to get you into the sand to attack you, and then that way it can harm you. That's why that gate is there, or that little portion that becomes the gate between you and the sand, because this thing can burrow, kind of like in the movie Tremors. This thing can burrow very easily in the sand, and it comes out, and then it attacks you, and then it disappears back inside the sand. So the whole idea behind this is to try to time it so that when it comes out, you keep your distance, you shoot at it. If you're brave enough, you can get out a melee weapon like an axe or whatever, and also start hitting with it, and just do it several times, and then that's it. I mentioned earlier that this feels like a mini boss because it was relatively easy, and it was. The dude that I was watching it battle this Twinfeeler, all he did was just, he took, I could think it was the rifle that he found right in that room, and he fired, I think, about 5 shots, and then that was it. Then the thing died. And if you're doing anything else as far as, let's say, the melee weapon, I don't know how many strikes it takes, but it seems like it's pretty easy. And you know you're hitting this thing because, interestingly enough, it'll shoot like a purplish liquid, like that's its blood. Its blood is purple, and that means that you're definitely making contact to it. So you do it enough times, and the thing dies. Before it dies, though, you can you just try to make sure that it doesn't hit you. Apparently, it can strike you several ways. It can run right at you, barging right into you, does damage. It also spews some kind of red liquid. But the guy that I saw on the walkthrough, he killed this thing so fast I didn't even see that part. I didn't see any red liquid come out. So it makes it seem, again, that it's so easy to beat it. But when you do this several times and it dies, then it does a very interesting cutscene. It actually curls up into like a ball of some sort, and it does this kind of like in a very animalistic way to protect itself, to ensure that it no longer has its sensitive part of its body, which is the middle part, open to any vulnerable areas. So when it does this, it curls up, and you think that it's dead. And then all of a sudden it unwinds itself, it runs away from you, and it crashes through a wall of some sort. And this wall later on becomes your own wall to escape the area that you're in. So interestingly enough, you think that this thing is dead, and then it's not. Then it runs away from you to be seen soon, which is through the form of its mature form that I'll talk about in another video, again, known as the Float Stinger. But yeah, this is the Twinfeeler. Very brief encounter, a little mini boss of sorts. Very easy to beat, especially if you have the shotgun or the rifle or anything along those lines. As long as you hit it several times, and that's it. Now, what it's supposed to represent, there's some theories regarding this. Number one, the most common theory and the most common basic thing, and it makes sense, is basically it's the stuff. It's a representation of what Alessa had in her room. Apparently she was a huge fan of collecting insects and posting them on the wall. You know how there's collectors out there that do such a thing where they take moths, they take larvae, they take other insects, other forms of insects, and they pin them to a wall and then place them in a in a frame of some sort with a glass in front of it, so that way it adds to their collection. Well, basically that's her. Like that's her. Probably one of her earlier collections come to life in this world that she creates in Silent Hill. And the reason that ties into this is because there's very little change between what it looks like in Silent Hill world as opposed to what it would look like in the real world. All it is just a caterpillar or a larva of some sort multiplied many times in size, and that's it. And this ties into it because if this were something that she were afraid of, then most likely she would have twisted it into something else far more evil looking, like something with fangs or something with eyes bugging out, something that looks completely different than what it would in real life, while still maintaining the same look and characteristics of its precursor. Another idea is that it represents Alessa herself, where it's her and her powers in its larval form, because whenever you actually then visit the next boss, which is the mature form of this Twinfeeler, the Float Stinger, then you're dealing with a whole different level of hardness when it comes to a boss. And so that's what's supposed to represent in Alessa, where her powers of some sort are marginalized when she was split early in the game, and when that happened, her powers were reduced, and so that's her, or metaphor of her in her larval form. That's more of a stretch to me. I thought that analogy was I guess something else that could make sense, but you're really kind of feeling to link it together. But otherwise, that's another theory altogether. I'm more along the lines thinking that, yeah, all it is just one of her insects, the ones that she had in her room that she loved, and she basically just made it an enemy within the game itself. So that way, if it comes across any of the other poor staffs in Silent Hill, like it did with the corpse earlier in the encounter with those little mini Twinfeelers, then this thing was having retribution against Alessa's people, the ones that did damage to her. The Twinfeeler made only several other appearances in the Silent Hill franchise. One, you'll see a picture of here in the play novel, and then another one having to do with another picture here in Silent Hill Mobile, and then that was it. It didn't appear anywhere else, nowhere in the films, nowhere in the comics. I don't recall it anywhere in the comics, nowhere in, of course, in the other games. Anything else as far as its appearances? Mainly, it was just within the first Silent Hill game, and then the play novel and the Silent Hill mobile option. But that was it. So, anything else? If its plans are being placed into any other future entries, who knows? But as of right now, it yet again is another monster that is just in this one game only. Alright, everybody. Thanks again as always, and you'll be on the lookout soon for the boss or the future adult version of the Twinfeeler, the Float Stinger, that I'll talk about in another video. Alright, everybody. Take care. Bye.